Hello, and welcome to this Biathlon Integrity Unit podcast interview with US biathlete and BIU ambassador Chloe Levins. I'm Callum Murray, and I'll be talking to Chloe about good whereabouts habits. Stay tuned. So, Chloe, many thanks for agreeing to take part in this BIU podcast interview on good whereabouts habits.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Can we start? Maybe I could just ask you why you think good whereabouts habits are important.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I believe wholeheartedly that good habits around whereabouts are absolutely imperative to helping maintain equality of opportunity in our sport. In order to have equal opportunity at every competition and during training, athletes have to abide by anti-doping rules and therefore submit whereabouts. Once you reach a certain level, it's kind of part of the duty you must accept in order to maintain integrity in our sport, I believe. And by upholding this right to an equal opportunity, our competitions are able to be honest assessments of who is the very best. And every athlete has the right to be free of the concern that the competition is tainted or fabricated due to a doping violation. So we must all do our part and take responsibility to be diligent about submitting whereabouts because our opportunity for equanimity depends on it.
Okay, and I should think that almost anyone listening to this podcast will know what we mean by whereabouts. But can you just remind us what we're talking about when we talk about whereabouts?
Yeah, whereabouts and whereabouts habits are when you submit the location of where you will be, whether it's a competition, a training, or where you are spending your overnight location, or where you'll be for that 60-minute time period every single day. So whereabouts are submitting that location and the times that you will be in certain places, including travel days, and details about those travels, which we do a lot on the biathlon circuit. So submitting these whereabouts to any anti-doping organization, whether it be national or international, allow doping officers to come find you and test you either by blood or by urine in order to ensure that you are not taking any prohibited substance in competition or out of competition, respectively, and that you are contributing to the effort of keeping our competitions and training fair and true and maintaining the integrity of our sport.
Which athletes are obliged to file their whereabouts? Because not every athlete has to file whereabouts, do they?
That's correct. Yeah, not every athlete does. Athletes under the jurisdiction of an anti-doping organization, as I said before, national or international, can be tested. The highest priority athletes, though, are in what's called the registered testing pool, and they provide whereabouts information to be located for testing. And the BIU has a minimum of 30 male athletes and 30 female athletes that have been designated to be tested by the IBU in that international registered testing pool. So that's a minimum. Other criteria can put someone in that testing pool as well, which include a top 20 on a World Cup or a significant change in performance could put you in that pool. You could be put in that pool while you're serving a period of ineligibility. For example, I'm not in the BIU registered testing pool, but I am in the registered testing pool for my nation. Therefore, the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, or USADA, as we call it, is our national anti-doping organization, which is a signatory to the World Anti-Doping Agency. And that means that it operates in harmony with WADA, as many other national organizations do for anti-doping, by maintaining the same prohibited lists and the same standards for reporting your whereabouts as well.
And if you're in a testing pool, how often should you file your whereabouts?
Yeah, I mean, your whereabouts need to be filed every single day. And at a minimum, they should include your overnight address, details about your training and competitions, as I mentioned earlier. If you have a job and you work on a regular schedule, as some of us athletes do in biathlon, then you put that information in as well. And most importantly, that 60-minute time slot, you need to be available for testing every single day at that address. And so to make a sufficient whereabouts entry, it's also super important to include room numbers and or the name of the apartment from which you're staying. And that is a crucial detail when on training camps and at competitions where we move from apartment to apartment, because although most tests are conducted between 5 a.m. and 11 p.m., they can happen outside of that time frame depending on the jurisdiction of that anti-doping organization that is testing you. So in those odd hours, as many of us know who traveled the circuit throughout the whole winter, no one is at reception in the hotel to be able to receive a doping control officer and help them find you in your specific room number. So it unfortunately becomes the athlete's fault in many cases if they don't include a simple name of their apartment or a few numbers in their whereabouts entry. In my experience, it's always been better to give more information than less.
So talking about your experience, when did you first start to file your whereabouts, and how did you go about making it part of your training routine?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was first selected for my nation's registered testing pool in 2017. So I've been submitting my whereabouts to USADA for 7 years. And what's been really important for me is to have consistency and routine around my reporting practice for my whereabouts. And so, for example, I have USADA bookmarked on my computer right next to my training log. And as I update my training log, I also update or double check that my whereabouts are correct for that evening, where I'll spend my overnight location. I have my 60-minute time slot usually in the evening. So I make sure that those details are correct and that I'm being as specific as possible. And if you're not an athlete that updates your training log on a daily basis, because I know, some of my teammates don't, and I sometimes forget, maybe there's a better way to pair your whereabouts with something you do every day, like brushing your teeth or simply checking over breakfast before starting your first training, where you have your 60-minute time slot selected, or maybe it's before you go to bed. As you put your head on the pillow, you just double check that you are in the location you say you're going to be, especially for that 60-minute window. And I think having this routine of just pairing whereabouts with a practice that you do every day, like updating your training log, helps you avoid unintentional mistakes in reporting.
How do you handle whereabouts on days when your normal routines change? And I'm thinking of, for example, when you're traveling or you're on a sleepover or any other changes.
Yeah, on days when your routine changes or is hijacked, or abruptly your flight is delayed or something out of your control happens, getting that information into the system as early as possible is really important. So I prefer to use the email or text function actually for USADA directly. And it's easier for me to do that in a pinch than to log into the system, especially if I am the one driving the vehicle on a travel day, for example. But what's most important is to make sure you have those overnight locations and your 60-minute window periods, that they are correctly submitted, whether it be by SMS, email, or via the portal. And as soon as your plans change, as early as possible, you can make that update, the better, and show that you're making a concerted effort to commit to the equal opportunity that I spoke about before.
And what happens if you're somewhere where there's no internet connection? I mean, that's relatively unusual nowadays, but it can still happen.
It is unusual, but it does still happen. For those of us who travel year round, there are certain locations that are notoriously unstable in terms of internet access. And if you are unable to connect to Atoms or whatever your whereabouts reporting platform is, the Anti-Doping Administration and Management System, Atoms, has this ability for you to send an SMS message to the system, and that information will be uploaded into Atoms. So I would recommend saving Atoms as a contact in your phone, or whatever your national anti-doping organization is, as a contact in your phone if they share this function. And that will most easily avoid any unintentional mistakes in whereabouts reporting, because you can send an SMS text if you don't have Wi-Fi. So there really is no excuse if you don't have internet connection, and there still is that ability, thankfully, that you can submit your whereabouts via text. It's a great function, and more people should use it.
Is it okay to let someone else, I'm thinking of your coach or your agent, take care of your whereabouts?
Technically, yes, it is. Athletes can have someone who represents them submit whereabouts information. And coaches might do this for an entire team during travel or competitions. But however, the athlete does remain solely responsible for their whereabouts, regardless of who submits them. So if you are not in the location consistent with your whereabouts as an athlete, it would be totally inappropriate to blame the representative or the team who submitted those whereabouts, or the coach who submitted those whereabouts. It's kind of similar to the rule of strict liability, which states that the athlete is solely responsible for having substances found in their body. The athlete is also solely responsible for their whereabouts. So it's really important to double check them yourself and take that personal initiative to being, submitting location and being where you say you're going to be.
And finally, what can you do to alert testing authorities in really exceptional circumstances?
In exceptional circumstances, the best thing you can do is alert the BIU, and you can contact them via email at antidoping@biathlonintegrity.com. And as I said before, when in doubt, providing more information is always better than less. Making that concerted effort to inform, get in touch, and share your whereabouts goes a really long way and shows that commitment to maintaining equal opportunity in biathlon.
Chloe, thank you so much. Those are really good and informative answers. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much for having me.